Alright guys, today we're going to be making a pretty simple and halfway functional hook knife. Alright, a quick little lesson I learned at the beginning of this project is to not try to grind stuff freehand with an angle grinder, because you might cut your fingers open. Luckily I didn't, but it was kind of scary, so make sure you clamp stuff down when you cut it out with an angle grinder. Today I'm going to be using an old saw blade for my steel, because saw blades have a decent amount of carbon, which means our knife will hold an edge. Now I'm just going to round off what will be the tip of our hook knife because I don't want it to be rectangular or pointy. And then I'll toss it in my forge, wait until it's red hot, and then I'm going to bend it over a 1-inch piece of pipe. And getting the shape of our hook knife is really that simple, guys. You don't need a lot of tools. Of course, you could go out and forge a bevel on there and bend it over the horn, but I'm trying to make this process as simple as possible. I went back and tweaked the knife a little just to get it exactly how I wanted it. And one thing I realized is that bending metal over another piece of metal will cool it down quickly and cause a lot of stress in the knife. So we're going to anneal it, which is basically heating it up red hot, letting it cool down. And I did that about 3 times. After that, I heated it up red hot once again and quenched it in some oil, and that's going to harden the blade. And just to check to make sure it's hard, I skated a file across it, and as you can tell, the file's not gripping into it, so it is pretty hard. Now I'm just going to clean it up a little with some sandpaper, mainly to get the scale off so I can see the color of the metal whenever we temper it. Next, I toss the knife in my high-tech tempering oven at 450 degrees. And it took my knife 40 minutes to turn a light straw color, and as you can see here, it's a little springy, and we have that gold color that we're looking for, although the time might be different in your case. So the next step in the process is to make the blade completely flat, or the blade portion of the knife, and I'm just going to run it across my diamond stone, which is or should be perfectly flat. Next, we need to grind a bevel on the knife. And I'll be honest, I really don't know what I'm doing, but if I absolutely had to give you some advice, it'd be to take long and complete passes on your belt sander or with your file. That way you get a nice consistent bevel. Now the other plane of our knife is the inside of the hook, and that needs to be cleaned out, so I took out my Dremel, threw it on low, and basically scraped out all the scale from there. And as I said before, I wanted to make this project as simple as possible, so for the handle we're just going to use a 3/4 inch oak dowel. And once the handle is cut out, we're going to make the slit for our hook knife to sit in. And first I started it with the bandsaw, but the bandsaw blade was not as wide as the saw blade that we used to make the knife out of, so I used the saw blade to widen it out. Now, halfway through this project, I had to go back to college, but that doesn't mean I have to stop the project. I clamped it up in my little carpenter's vise. If you want to know how I made this thing, it's pretty simple, and I'll put a link to it in the upper right hand corner. But I'm going to drill a pilot hole for my 1/4 inch drill bit. That way we can throw a pin through our handle, through our knife, and out the other side. Next, I figure out where the hole needs to be in my hook knife, and then I start hand drilling a hole through there. But then I realize I don't really have the time for that, and I got out my power drill. Then I check to make sure I didn't screw up at all, and as you can see, we have a good 1/4 inch hole through our knife that we can stick a brass pin through. So for the glue up, as usual, I'm using a 2-part epoxy from Harbor Freight. It's pretty strong stuff. It's not the greatest, but it's cheap and it does the job. I'm gonna wipe some mainly on the blade. I can't exactly get it into the handle. And as you can see, I've already placed the pin through one side of the handle. That way I can find where the pin is with the hole of the hook knife. And I'm using my vice grips to jam everything together. Now, if it looked like I didn't know what I was doing when I was grinding the bevel, you'll for sure know that I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to sharpening the bevel. I figured out that for me the easiest way to get a kind of decent edge was to run the diamond stone across the bevel like you can see here. But if you personally have experience with sharpening hook knives, I would really appreciate it if you could toss something down in the comments. Tell me how you sharpen your hook knife. It not only will help me, but it'll help other people. After I went from 300 grit to 1000 grit, I stropped it on this little cheap piece of leather, and the compound I'm using is some turtle wax. Alright, the results are in, and we have a functional hook knife. Is it a great hook knife? No, but it's a pretty simple process to make one of these guys. I think a lot of people could do it. If you don't, however, have a tool that I used in this video, let me know and I can think of a substitute that you could use instead. And some sort of future implications for this knife, if I were to make one again, I will definitely make the curve a lot wider. I think making it this tight just really made it harder on myself to grind and sharpen the bevel. And if I made it wider, of course we'd be making wider bowls, but I think I'd have a better end product. So, like I said earlier, if you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in my next video.